Hey, my fellow apocalypse survivors, Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to Rad's Guide to Project Zomboid, Episode 2, How to Fight. So on my search for a better house, what I could do is go back and, because I have a backpack now, grab these books. Knowing that these books may or may not be kept on me, I would not count them to mark them off on my tracker, because I don't have a permanent place for them, but I will keep them with me for now so that I don't have to find them again, knowing that if I need the weight, I can always ditch them. It's not a problem. Now, I am going to get hungry at some point in the game, and it's worth mentioning that your character will display their needs for food and water, or food and thirst, I should say, in the top right as moodlets. So there's no status bar here for food or water or tiredness or anything like that. It's just in moodlets. And the moodlets are kind of hard for new players to read. So once I start to get a moodlet, I can show you. But essentially, the way the moodlets work is there's a moodlet for every type of status effect, and they get more colorful with severity. So if you're a little hungry versus you're starving, it will be like, slightly colorful versus very colorful. And they're pretty easy to use. The other thing is, don't eat uncooked food. So the uncooked meats in this fridge here are dangerous to me because they're uncooked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the milk, and then I'm going to grab some of the canned goods. So we'll do canned beef, fruit cocktail, tomato, and vegetable soup. And store those in the backpack as well, just in case I get hungry. Now, apart from the milk that I don't have a water storage vessel. So that would be another really good thing for me to look for, is like some sort of water bottle that I can use to fill up at sinks that I find. So that's going to be something that I look for as well. First time going outside. So check your corners, and then use your mouse wheel to zoom out and look around to make sure that you don't have anything that you have to immediately address. And what I want to be doing here is, before I even leave this house, because I looted it, it's clear, I'm going to hit M, select the color that I want, which is red, and then maybe select the little X. Is there a smaller X? I'll just do big X, it's fine. And mark down, that house has been looted. I don't need to return to it. It's done. One really nice thing to loot here are garages. So in order to try to jimmy up a window, you can hold E as an echo. Not all windows are going to allow you to open that way. If you hear a loud thunk at the end of it, it means it's locked and can't be opened. It can be smashed, but smashing windows generates a lot of noise and then also generates sharp glass. So you're going to need to clean the glass out of a window that you smash, and then be careful of the noise that you've generated, because you will have attracted zombies more than likely. Also, close the window behind you by either tapping E or right-clicking for the context menu, so that if a zombie does come up behind me, instead of just diving through the window, which is really dangerous, by the way, because when zombies dive through something, they will slide into your legs and possibly knock you down, which makes you hyper vulnerable. It's a very dangerous situation to be in. Instead, they'll just thunk on the window a while until they break it. And they don't break it instantly unless there's a ton of zombies. So we're looking for the tools that are on my tracking list here. And I could just tell you that hammers are one of them. So I'm going to take that hammer and stick it in the hiking bag. The club hammer is a one-handed blunt weapon that is too unwieldy to drive nails, as it tells you in the description. So it's not a hammer that you can build with. The club hammers are useful for breaking down doors manually by smashing them over and over. But a regular hammer can do that as well. So I usually pass up club hammers. Metal bars can be used as improv weapons. They're not as durable as the crowbar, so I'm going to stick with the crowbar. The propane tank is really nice to find because if you're doing any metal work, you're going to need propane fuel. And a full propane tank might be worth mentioning, writing down on the map so that we know that there is one here. But it also weighs a whole lot. So it's not something that we want to carry around with us because it will encumber us way too much, way too fast. Sneakers let you run faster, but my 2 cents is you should not sprint very often in the game. Sprinting will wind you, and when you're winded and tired, you don't fight very well. So sprinting is one of those things that you do as a method of escape of last resort. Unless you've changed the default settings, your walk speed is faster than zombies can chase you. So you don't need to run away from them. And that's all I want from here. But I will write down that this is propane. So with this, I'm going to use my pencil and add a note here. Propane. And then put a little arrow where the propane is. And now, if I ever need propane, I know where it is. And also, this is another note of like, I've searched this area, I've taken everything useful, but there is propane left. I did mention before that garbage bags are really helpful to use. Garbage bags relate to a carpentry skill, which allows you to build water storage, like rain collectors. So it's useful to collect, I don't know, let's say 12, 16 garbage bags. But once you have like 12 or 16 of them, it's probably enough. Unless you're trying to play multiplayer and you need a lot more water. Now, when you come up on a new car, there's a few things to note. One is whether it has fuel in it already or not. Because a lot of the times when you find a vehicle, the vehicle will be, you might have keys for it and it might be in good working order, but it might be empty, no fuel. So finding cars that have fuel in it allows you to siphon that fuel for cars that you might want to use, and then also just searching for keys. So one way to figure out if the car is in good working order is to go to the hood, hit E, and inspect it. So this is a car at about 68% overall condition, which is reasonable. The really important things for durability, in my opinion, is the condition of the engine, because an engine that is really broken down is likely to stall out and not work, which can be pretty fatal. Because if you're about to get surrounded and you go to like turn over the engine and escape, and the engine's just turning over and over, not so good. Also, the engine power. The horsepower in this game, they're all ridiculous. Every car has like 5 times more horsepower than they would in real life. So 339 is kind of like average for this game, which is silly because the car I drive probably has a functional horsepower of like 90, as it's a 12-year-old hatchback. But is it 12? No, it's like 15 years old now. And then if you click on the engine itself, the engine will have a loudness meter and a quality meter. So the quality is different than the condition. The quality is like how well it is made, and the condition is like how well it is maintained. So the higher the quality, the more reliable it will be. And the condition won't matter until it breaks fully. So you're going to want to try to find cars that have an engine that have like reasonable condition, but generally I would say the loudness and quality is better. So you want a loudness that is low and a quality that is high. And then the other driving factors, and these are immutable numbers. This is why I'm mentioning it. You can't change these engine numbers. You can't even take the engine out. So this is a permanent, immutable feature of this car, whereas a lot of the parts of this car can be replaced. So it's like, oh, this driver's seat is almost worn out. Not that that really matters, but you could pull the driver's seat out and put a different seat in. You can't do that with an engine. The other thing that affects noise would be the muffler. So the muffler multiplies the engine loudness. So this is an old muffler that's crummy because it makes the, and I know the let me move this. It makes the engine a little bit louder than it would otherwise. So if you're trying to have a stealth car, you want one that has a good muffler and a quiet engine. And then the other things is the other things that I would say are most concerning would be the quality of the tires, the pressure of the tires, and then the durability of the tires. Because the things that will stop your car is the dead engine or blown out tires, usually more than one. You can kind of drive on 3 tires, but you cannot really drive on 2 tires. So the way that you typically die in a car is either that the driver's side front left window gets broken and you get attacked from zombies through it. You leave the door open because you're not patient enough to shut the door when you hop in, and you get attacked through an open door, or your car dies on you, either because you've busted up the engine to the point where it won't run, you've blown out the tires to the point where they're gone, or you run out of gas. Those are typically the ways that you will die in a car, and are worth avoiding. So this gas tank has a little bit of gasoline, as a 1/31st% gasoline. So there's a tiny little bit of gas here to be able to siphon, but that amount of gas is not going to get you very far. It's going to get you like a few city blocks, and that's about it. The other thing we could do here, provided I don't have immediate zombies attacking me. So there is a cluster of 5 zombies up here that I should keep an eye on because I don't want them wandering towards me, is to look inside the car in like the glove box if it's open. Oh, it's not open. To see if there are car keys. Back here, there is more useful tools. So a gas can is a very useful tool to have. I generally only will keep one on me because they're pretty heavy. And then I will try to loot a lot more gas cans as I play later on once I have a base. Because gas cans allow you to stock up on gasoline, which keeps your generators running, which keeps your power running once the power gets cut. But it's not reasonable to carry a bunch of gas cans on you because you're not Hercules. You're not the Hulk. You can't hold multiple gas cans easily. And then lug wrenches allow you to take tires off and on. And I'm not really going to worry about car maintenance items until I have a car. I don't personally think it's worth doing. So instead, let's go over and search the garage. So here, you can see the window is red. If I chose to swing right now, I would break the window. And I could basically guarantee that the zombies up here would hear it. So I'm going to try to jimmy it open instead. It's also useful before you jump in a window to sort of try to scan as much as you can to see if there's zombies inside. Because you're very vulnerable when you're going through windows and the like, through windows and doors. I would say breaching between windows and doors are typically the times where veteran players will even get bit or attacked or grabbed or whatever. All right, so here we go. Here's another tool chest. A screwdriver is another tool that we should have at all times. A screwdriver allows you to do electronics work, primarily, but also maintenance and the like. And I'm going to right-click the hammer and the screwdriver to favorite them. And then I'll do that with the tweezers as well. The wood glue is a very useful and very lightweight repair item that lets you, primarily, I would say the wood glue is useful in fixing things like baseball bats and the like. And wood glue, because it's so lightweight, is generally worth grabbing. We have got a car battery charger and then more metalworking stuff. So at this point, what I could do on the map is make another note. I'm going to add a note here. Gas cans. Pretty straightforward. And then a little arrow up. It's going to get a little messy, but that's fine. As long as I can read it. So there's gas cans in the garage and the car. And then there's propane next door. And that might be useful for me to know later on. So if I was brand new to the game, I might avoid this confrontation with the zombies. But because I've played hundreds of hours, I'm not going to. And it's a good example for me to demonstrate like smart zombie engagement, which is, like I said, very, very important for you to understand. It also looks like there's a large parking lot and a church here. And large open areas are good places to fight because there are not a lot of things that will block your line of sight. So it's much harder for zombies to sneak up on you, which is dangerous. You know, you do not want to get jumped. So what I'm going to do here is hit C as in Charlie, which will go into a sneak. And the way this works, sneak will also level up my sneaking skill, which is here. One of the strange things about sneak is if you're near zombies and they haven't detected you, you will level up your sneaking. And if they have detected you, you will stop leveling up your sneaking. So as a strange result of that mechanic, you can tell whether or not you are seen by zombies by whether or not your sneaking level is increasing. There's other ways to exploit leveling up sneaking. I'm not going to get into those. But sneaking will reduce, of course, the sound and the sight that you're making, allowing you to approach. Now, new players might be told to hit Q. Q is the default bind, as I will show you. The default bind, and there's a tutorial built in. If you're in a vehicle, it is your car horn. And then if you are on foot, it is your yelling or shouting. When you're sneaking, it is a whisper, which is a really good way to lure a zombie or two away from a group so that you can isolate them and kill them. Because taking on like 5 or 6 zombies at once is way sketchier than just like 2 or 3 at a time. I would say the ideal engagement obviously is like a 1v1. But 2v1 or 1v2 or 1v3 are pretty manageable. Once you get more than 3 zombies or so, unless you're very good at multi-hit, they become way harder to deal with when you're starting to get swarmed. So I'm going to sneak up to this group of zombies. And what I can do is I can try to ideally let 1 or 2 of them see me to drive them away, because I can use sight as much as I can use whispering. And you can also hear that contextually, the music has shifted from passive music to combat music, indicating that I have a combat opportunity on my hands. So once you're seen, your sneaking will stop leveling up, but the active sneaking is tiresome. It will wear you out. So once they see you, stop sneaking. So hit Charlie again to be in, or C as in Charlie to be in a default stance. And then hold right click to ready your weapon. And as I said, the longer the weapon, the better. So if you have a kitchen knife, this is not going to be a fun combat. If I didn't have like a crowbar or a baseball bat or some decent combat weapon, I would avoid combat at all costs. Because the amount of effort it takes to take down a zombie with a bad weapon is just not worth the engagement unless they're protecting something valuable. Wait until it's lit, and then swing. And you'll know that you're hitting stuff whenever you see that highlight. Now that those 2 are dead, you might have noticed my combat stance. My combat stance was essentially holding right click, which uses your Nimble skill. And I gained 1.25 experience in Nimble. But generally speaking, unless you have really high combat stance, your engagements are going to look like that, where you're backpedaling continually while attacking them and knocking them over. That's like 99% of Zomboid combat on foot. And the speed at which you're backpedaling is your Nimble ability. It's not your sprinting or light-footedness, which is why Nimble is such a useful skill, because the faster you can backpedal like that, the less you have to disengage to make room. So when your Nimble skill is below, I think 5 or so, the zombies will catch up as you're fighting them. But as soon as you hit like Nimble level 5 or so, which takes a long time unless you have a lot of ability modifiers, you can back up as fast as they can approach, which makes it a lot easier to kill them. And then also in using a crowbar, I leveled up some long blunt ability as well. And then there's another skill called maintenance. Maintenance is a skill that lets you use tools or weapons without damaging them. It's essentially your efficiency at not breaking the things you're using, and that leveled up a little bit as well. Crowbars are really good tools to use just because they're very durable, so they're very reliable as a result and won't break. Now that the zombies are dead, I can look at what loot there is. So currently I have shoes on, they have shoes, so that's not much help to me. I have long socks, which covers your shins, so I don't really need a new pair of long socks. They do, however, have a black digital watch, and I'm going to put that on. So black digital watch will open up your ability to see the time, date, temperature. It's a very fancy digital watch that almost everyone owns, which gives me the information that it is, 62.2 Fahrenheit, which for those that deal in Celsius, that's like cool room temperature. It's just past noon, and it's the middle of the summer. So the other things I'm going to be looking for these guys is any clothing that will significantly increase my protection stats. And they don't really have any clothing that would help me in that way. And you can see the clothing that they do have. So for instance, I can pan my camera over and like this zombie has a hat. None of them have coats. This one has a leather coat. That black, the one with the violet purple skirt has a leather jacket on. So that could help my my protection stats. So let's go ahead and carefully engage the remainder of this group. So a useful tool here is to use barriers. Oh, and here's a really good example. So once they're downed, you can hold right click and try to position yourself directly over their head and stomp. I do not suggest trying to stomp zombies to death when you're barefoot, but as long as you have shoes or even ideally boots on, it's a very effective method to kill zombies without damaging your weapons. And also, as you're standing on a zombie, they don't have the capacity to stand back up, so it neutralizes them. So if I was fighting two enemies at once and I knock one over, I can stand on that one enemy and fight the other one, keeping the one I'm standing on neutralized until I'm done fighting the second one. So it's a really good way to isolate your opponents and make sure that you're not fighting a 1v2. But here, as you can see, it is stomping and it's dead. If they get too close, you won't swing. Instead, you'll do a push. And then if they get any closer than that, it's worth trying to disengage. So anytime you have too many zombies that are too close to you, just bail. Just disengage. Don't, however, disengage slowly. Because if you have a lot of zombies next to you and you turn around and they grab you from behind, ooh, that is a very fast way to die, especially on apocalypse difficulty, but even on a survivor difficulty, that's often going to result in you getting bit to the neck like they're vampires, and you will die a gruesome, bloody, very quick death. All right, they did not have anything worth wearing. They do have a walkie-talkie. In multiplayer, you can use walkie-talkies to talk with other players. The other thing that's worth noting is that these clothings will have their own conditions. So for instance, this workman shirt here is bloody, which is not a problem because we can always launder it, but its condition is full, that first green bar. And then the other bars is insulation to temperature, wind resistance, because you can be affected by like wind chill and the like, and then how bloody it is. And then the numbers below that is how much bite and scratch defense it offers. So this shirt offers 0 bite, 0 scratch, and I'm wearing a denim shirt which offers 7 and 15. So it's the difference between them. So if I see something that is green, it's better, generally speaking. And if I see something that is red, it is worse. It's not always true because different clothing will have different coverages. So for instance, a t-shirt doesn't cover your forearms. So a t-shirt could have better protection stats than your long sleeve shirt. But with that, that's a bad analogy because you can layer your clothing. But so it's also worth mentioning that when you do a right-click inspect, it'll actually show you how it's covered. So this denim shirt, for instance, doing a right-click inspect is upper torso, lower torso, upper arms, lower arms. So it's not neck, but all torso. All right, let's keep going. So here is a good example of going through trees. Avoid that if you can. Makes noise, slows you down, and then you also have a chance to trip or be scratched, depending on your traits. There's some traits that mitigate that, but you essentially don't want to be caught up, hung up on things like that. Okay, and another one dead, and he really didn't have anything worth anything to me. And here what I'm doing is making sure that there's nothing hiding directly behind the tree, because you can't see through those things, and also making sure that there's nothing in the house that is going to leap out at me. Now here is my first moodlet. There was a few times where I had a little bit of panic, which is a temporary moodlet about how scared you are in an engagement, but those go away as soon as the source of the panic goes away. Generally speaking, there are some traits that make you panicked for no reason, like agoraphobia or claustrophobia or hemophilia, where you might be scared of the outdoors, scared of the indoors, scared of blood, things like that. But this is my first moodlet that needs addressing, which is dry mouth. I'm a little thirsty. You can die of starvation, you can die of thirst, and they're two things that are generally pretty avoidable. So I'm going to pop into this new house, and I'm not here to really loot it at the moment, because I know that there's a lot of enemies in the nearby area. So it's not really safe to go into a house unless you've sort of secured the outside, because outside is a much safer place to fight than inside. Outside, you have, space to maneuver, and there aren't blind corners and the like. Indoors is a way more dangerous place to be in because there are blind corners and there are obstacles and objects that might break and shatter, and there'll be glass and all that. So I try to fight as outside as often as I can, just because it's easier. But what I'm here for is, one, to look into the kitchen. Yep, and in the refrigerator there's orange soda, which is what I was looking for. So I'm going to grab the lettuce, put it in my backpack, and grab the orange soda, and I'm actually going to pour it on the ground. And I'll explain why in a moment. So the game also has the concept of calories in, calories out. So your character has a weight, and anyone that has watched my other Project Zomboid content knows that I tend to get really fat really fast, like in a hilarious way. And there is actually ramifications for being underweight or overweight. Being overweight, obese, very obese, means that you'll tire out quicker. You'll have less endurance. You won't be able to climb things as reliably. And then underweight has their own same sort of equal but opposite effects. So the reason I poured out the orange soda is a lot of calories that are just not what I'm looking for right now. But what I can do is I can right-click this bottle, favorite it, and then fill it up on the sink here. And then I'm using the bottle to fill my thirst needs. So this bottle can regularly be drawn upon automatically without any input from me. Anytime I'm thirsty, my character will take a sip of this, as long as it's in my inventory and not in my backpack. That's important. As long as it's in my inventory, and then my thirst is going to be met, and I can just, anytime I'm near a sink, I just top it up. Now, not all water bottles are the same. Some bottles weigh less and contain more water than others in a somewhat violating the laws of physics way. So look out for bourbon bottles. Those are really nice to have. which is very counterintuitive, but they contain a lot of liquid for not a lot of weight. So, being the greedy little goblin that I am, instead of continuing to loot this house, I am going to go after that leather jacket. Because leather jackets, that leather jacket specifically isn't the long type. So there's kind of there's actually like 3 types of leather jackets. There's like biker jackets. There's regular leather jackets and there's long leather jackets. And at first glance, that does not look like the long type. The long type is kind of like a duster where it goes kind of to your knees, which offers you upper thigh protection, which is better than the jackets that end at the waist. Because the jackets that end at the waist don't give you that extra, half foot of leather that covers your thighs. But any leather jacket's going to be better than nothing. These cars here are likely wrecked cars that are totaled that don't have doors or anything. So these are they'll have trunks that you might be able to open, but these will never be operational. They're kind of just debris that's in the way. You can tow them out of the road if you want clean roads around your base, there is a way to hitch things to your car and drag them. But yeah, unless I can get their trunks open easily, there's just not much value here. So here we go. I'm going to take these fights as if I'm sort of new to the game, so I can demonstrate caution. The veteran in me just wants to like round all these guys up and kill them all at once. But that would be doing the new players a disservice. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to peel these zombies off 1 or 2 at a time, because that's way more manageable. Dragging them away so that the sound that I generate by killing them won't alert the others. Because if I don't get far enough away from the heart of the horde, they will hear me and be drawn to the noise. And then the caution will have been wasted. And now that there's only 3 left, I could definitely engage the remaining 3. Because by the time the back 2 get to me, this guy is likely dead. And that was a case of multi-hit. And now they're all dead. You can also pause the game. I've been pausing the game a lot so that I can explain concepts to you all. But you can pause the game and go through their inventory with the game fully paused. And this actually happens to look like the long type of leather jacket, which is really good. So as you can see, his bite and scratch defense is much, much, much higher than what I'm currently wearing. In fact, I don't have any overcoat at all. The other thing to note is it does have high insulation stats. So that means that if it gets really hot out, I might need to take it off, or else I will overheat. And overheating makes it very difficult to fight or run. But it's not too hot right now, so I'll wear it. So if I right-click on this, as you can see, it covers groin, thighs, and neck. So it's covering a lot of things that weren't previously covered. And as a result, my upper body and groin and thighs have a scratch defense of around 50%, a little higher, which is great. So it means like half of the scratches to my upper body will be deflected by my armor instead of actually injuring me, which is very helpful. It's also worth noting that if I was to get scratched, let's say I get scratched in the upper arm, if the armor does its job, it will also likely be destroyed. And the reason I mention that is it's worth having duplicates, triplicates, backups, etc. Because if my leather gloves, for instance, will deflect a bite, they're also going to be destroyed in the process. And unless I have a very, very high tailoring skill, I won't be able to patch those holes to make them as good as new. You can patch holes, but not as good as new unless you're really high tailoring skill. So having multiple pairs of leather gloves and multiple leather jackets and the like is very handy to do once you have storage for it. Don't have it on your person. Maybe have one spare on your person as you are like waiting to put it into storage or something. But don't be a loot hoarder, because again, encumbrance is a big problem. So I did mention that I am looking for a car, and there's a few cars in this lot. They don't look like very good cars, but car keys can be found in glove boxes. They can be found on the ground. They can be found on zombies that are adjacent to the cars, although that doesn't happen very often. So it's useful to... Oops, I swung early. It's useful to clear these zombies and check these cars for the rare case that they might actually have something useful. I would say, in my experience, maybe like 1 out of 20 to 1 out of 50 cars you might find keys to. It's frequent enough that it's worth checking, but you shouldn't be discouraged if you just don't find keys, because sometimes it just doesn't happen. You can also sometimes find keys... Oh, we have a group coming out of the woods here. You can also sometimes find keys in the storage containers directly corresponding to the vehicle. So this vehicle here is parked outside of this building. So there's also a small chance that the shelves of this building might have keys to this vehicle. Certainly not a guarantee, but it's possible. So 2 other moodlets that just popped up. This one is pretty obvious. It's a fork and knife, so it's peckish. At peckish levels of hunger, you don't actually suffer any penalties, but as you become more hungry, your strength goes down, and your ability to fight goes down. And your ability to carry weight goes down. So keeping your hunger in check is useful. You don't want to get any more hungry than peckish. And then the other one is panic. So slight panic is not that much of a problem, but the more panicked you are, the harder it will be to fight. So at really high levels of panic, like if I get swarmed by like dozens of zombies, I would have extraordinarily high levels of panic, which would mean that because I'm panicked or whatever, I'm not actually swinging very effectively. It ruins your aim with weapons, and then it tanks your damage with melee. There are ways to counteract panic. One is that there's a trait called Brave that you could take, which reduces the amount of panic that you incur. You could also start with the occupation Veteran, which gives them a special trait called Desensitized, which makes them immune to panic. Or alternatively, as you survive in this game, you become less panicked because you get more used to being around zombies. So if you have been surviving for 6 months, a group of 10 zombies aren't going to freak you out. Whereas like on day 1, that will absolutely freak you out. Speaking of unique traits, the Lumberjack Axeman trait is unique to being a Lumberjack. You can't get Axeman any other way, without mods, of course. So some occupations have unique traits that only you can get taking those occupations, like Lumberjack with Axeman or Desensitized with Veteran, whereas other traits are just a mix of abilities that you would be able to unlock yourself anyway. So is having... Whoa. Jeez, I almost knocked it over. Is having many loot places like cars useful? My 2 cents is having a car that has a high storage capacity, that is reliable, that's not going to die on you, is very useful. And then having a building with a lot of storage for your horde is generally my go-to goal. And that's what we're working on, as you can see above my head. As you saw right there, that was another benefit of the highlight enemies. The zombie fell sort of behind the car and obscured it, and I was able to see the outline of the zombie because I had highlighted targets. Unlike buildings, the windows of a car cannot be jimmied open unless you're a burglar. Whereas like building windows, you can sort of force open. Sometimes it fails and they lock on you. So generally the go-to if you want to get into a car is to smash the windows, unless you can jimmy them open or lockpick them. So in this car, there are cigarettes. Cigarettes are actually, oddly enough, a useful thing to hold, and they don't weigh too much. So they're a useful thing to have for farming. There is a trait called Smoker, and Smoker requires you to regularly smoke cigarettes or you become anxious. But I'm just going to take 20 cigarettes for the possibility of farming sometime in the future. I probably won't need more than 20. And because they just don't weigh very much, they don't weigh me down. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking through the glove box. There's no keys. And then I can also see that the trunk is locked. This little green indicator here. So I can click that. to unlock the trunk. And then as I approach the trunk, I can actually open it. So here's the trunk. And the trunk has buckets of paint, paintbrush, safety goggles, and twine. I can put on the safety goggles. Having a lot of things on your body, on your head specifically, allows you to sometimes mitigate attacks. So ideally, you're going to want some sort of helmet, like a biker helmet or a fireman helmet or some construction helmet, some sort of helmet, because that will block bites and scratches. But until you have a helmet like that, you can just wear like baseball caps and glasses and things like that. And sometimes what ends up happening when a zombie attacks you and lands a hit, instead of hitting you, it just knocks your glasses off, which is, it will go on the ground and you can pick it back up, but it's way better than getting scratched or bit to the face. And then also let's eat this lettuce, this head of lettuce that I have, to fix the hunger that I have. And we're gonna go. So I'm going to continue killing the zombies in this here parking lot, looking for car keys or other useful loot items. Antidepressants. So when your character does, there's a bunch of different ways to get sad. Eating like dog food is one way. Doing the same thing over and over and over, days on end, is another way to get really sad. There are better ways to, in-game, I'm not talking about real life mental wellness. In-game, there are better ways to get happy than probably antidepressants, in my opinion, by reading books or magazines or watching videotapes, things like that. So antidepressants are useful, but as long as you know how to manage your moods, they're not really needed. And then here's a round neck sweater. Despite the name, it actually doesn't cover the neck, but it does. I will layer it underneath my leather jacket, offering me yet another layer of protection. So another 10 scratch. So my scratch previously was at like 60. So it should be at 65, or was it 55 rather? So it's at 65 now. And here's a good indicator. Because of, I know that let me hide my overlays for a second. That's not how to do that. Because I've been wearing a whole lot of different layers here, I am now unpleasantly hot. Consider taking off clothing, my thirst is increased. So the hotter you get, initially it's just a thirst increase, but eventually it is like a physical exhaustion where your stamina kind of tanks. So the game is warning me that I'm getting a little hot. So instead of ignoring that, I'm actually gonna put the sweater in my backpack for later, so that it cool back off. You know, listen to the tooltips. Okay. Thank you for tuning in to Rad's Guide to Project Zomboid, which originally streamed live on Twitch March 28th as a result of a viewer's choice poll. If you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments below, but for this series, I'm not taking feedback. If you would like to join my online gaming community, which is a great place to ask me questions about this game and others, Rhadamant.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for tuning in. A big thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. I really appreciate it. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream. Farewell, my fellow zombie slayers.